And we're live.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cult of Copy show. It is Thursday, July 3rd, 2014, which means it is time for another live episode. We record these weekly, unless I take a week off because of extenuating circumstances. I had to take a week off because I had a baby a couple of weeks ago. Not me personally, my wife did. We had it together. I helped. Um, Usually it's Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to join us live, of course, these Google Hangouts stream to YouTube. So if you do like what you see in this episode and you want to see more, this is episode 12, I believe. So there are actually 12 more because we did an episode 0 in the YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/cultofcopy. If you like the content so much that you want to subscribe, you can do that. And if you see the URL under my head here, it is cultofcopy.com. Currently, that redirects directly to the Facebook discussion group, which is the reason this show exists. You're welcome to join us. You have to request to join. I approve most people, as long as you don't have a weird spammy-looking Facebook profile. So fair warning on that. Soon, though, as far as cult news goes, that URL will be pointing to the Cult of Copy website, which will be a kind of bloggy news site hub linking to the group and to this show and to the upcoming podcast, which this show will be. Again, the website kind of determines when we're going to start doing a podcast, because I got a cool plugin that helps me make the feed for the audio files that iTunes and Stitcher are going to want. So I'm like, sweet, give me some shortcuts. Anyways, that's getting worked on in the background, so that's fun and exciting. And let's see, I introduced the show, I introduced the group. Me, if you care, I'm the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin DiTerrio, and those are real titles that I paid money for on the internet, so respect those. If we were in my office, you could see the official certificates. But instead, we're on my back porch. Anyways, I was a professional copywriter. I freelanced for a while, and I write and talk a lot about copywriting and persuasion. I started a discussion group with my friends. It grew and grew and grew. Now we are approaching 9,000 members in the Facebook group at the URL that I mentioned below, cultofcopy.com. So again, if you like any of this stuff, jump in. I'm just sort of the shepherd of the group, I guess you could say. But to that end, I'm going to run my mouth a bit about some cool stuff today that might help you. It's a little bit of psychology, a little bit of persuasion, and I'm going to talk about how you can specifically apply it to your business. So if you saw the announcement for this episode, which probably you had to, or else why would you be here? This week's episode, we're going to talk about a logical fallacy called false dichotomy. And if you are a subscriber to the paid Cult of Copy newsletter, the current issue that's out right now, I wrote a bit about false dichotomy as a logical fallacy. If you're having a real debate with someone in an official forum where like someone's keeping score or something, you wouldn't want to use a false dichotomy. What a false dichotomy is when you take any complex situation and through chicanery and diversion and tricky language, you boil it down to what seems like only two options, one of which sucks. So obviously that makes your option seem better. When you put arguments forth that way, a lot of times the audience who is watching is not savvy enough to realize the little logical tricks that you're making to boil it down to those only two choices. Plus, it has the added effect of anyone in the audience that already agrees with your position, reducing it down to this kind of argument is something they will readily accept and allow to reinforce their opinion because it feeds into their confirmation bias. So the trick with false dichotomies is that, like I said, in an official debate situation, you probably wouldn't be allowed to get away with that because it's false. It leads to an argument that's not true, and it can misdirect people. It's not like a fair, quote-unquote, argument. But in circumstances of persuasion, like I said in that newsletter article I mentioned, I have no problem putting forth illogical arguments as persuasive material, whether in sales or not, because people, we already know if you're in the marketing world that people don't make decisions based on logic. They make decisions based on emotion. So if you can use their emotions to set up a false dichotomy, which kind of feels logical, that's the thing with them. They sound like they make sense. It's only when you stop and think about it that you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't quite hold water, how these things are allegedly only two choices. So to give you an example, this is a little bit of an extreme example. In the announcement for this episode, I said there are two types of people in the world, the ones who will attend this show, geniuses who will attend this week's Cult of Copy show, and turd eaters. And I didn't really back up that argument, but that's an example of a false dichotomy. Anytime you hear someone make an argument where it's either A or it's B, or you are either A or B, they're making typically a false dichotomy because, of course, in any sort of real-world complex scenario, there are going to be many, many more options and even degrees of each individual option rather than a clear black and white A or B split choice. So that's what we're going to talk about when we dive into the deeper content of the show. But like in previous episodes, I wanted to take a moment and talk about something cool that I saw out in the advertising world. And I actually heard this one on the radio today. And Newcastle Brown Ale, if you're familiar, it's a British beer. Not hugely popular in the United States, but it's usually like in a place where they serve Guinness. They'll have Newcastle also, in my experience, in the American South. It's pretty good stuff. I like it. It's not one that I buy and like stock up at home, but if I'm out somewhere and they got a special on it, it's tasty beer. I like it. Anyways, to get to the point of why I'm talking about it today, I've talked before and I've taught people how if you want to have a sale, you really don't need a super strong reason. You can just say because X, like we're having a discount today because of Y. I had one the other day, like on the 20th or something, where I dropped the price of the Cult newsletter to $13, which I meant to do on Friday the 13th of that month. And I just got busy with the new baby and things, so I didn't. So like a week later, I was like, I wanted to have this sale on the 13th where I dropped this to $13, but I forgot. So now we're going to do it now on like the 26th or whatever. And that should just give you an example of how you don't really need a legitimate reason. But if you do tie it to something that's occurring out in the real world, it can draw people's attention if it's something that they're thinking about. So to go all the way back to that Newcastle Brown Ale thing, their campaign that they're doing right now is that it's they're running ads with famous British voices, like from actors and things. Like they had one from Stephen Merchant, the comedian, who he was on The Office, the British version of The Office. He was one of the co-creators of that. Not he specifically, but the idea behind the campaign is what if we won? And it's what if Britain had won the American Revolution? And it's timed specifically to right now, which, like I said, it's July 3rd. So it's the day before July 4th, which is American Independence Day. Most businesses are closed. It's a big holiday weekend. Lots of people are going to have cookouts, spend time with the family, celebrate these wonderful freedoms we have in America. So the pitch with this what if we won, the campaign fires off today, July 3rd, which would be the last day America was part of Britain. And the joke is they're telling you what they're going to celebrate on that day and all these like British traditions thrown together, and then they're like, at the end of the day, you're going to kick back and open a Newcastle. Now, what's cool about that is today, July 3rd, is the day everyone is probably going shopping for the cookout they're going to have on July 4th or some point over this weekend. So if they're thinking of stocking up on beers, if Newcastle was smart enough to get their people to set up prominent displays and perhaps have a sale in the grocery stores, that radio ad campaign is going to tap into that because it'll be front and center right after they heard the commercial on the day on which they are going shopping and are very likely going to stock up on some beers for the cookout, right? So I thought that was very ingenious because it sounds like a random because type excuse, but they took it very, very seriously. And they said even like I didn't hear the commercial on the radio. I actually heard a piece about the campaign on the news. And the advertising executives talked about how they had this idea a year ago at this time and have been developing it that long. And of course, obviously, you can't have the idea like a week ago and get like celebrities to show up and do your voiceovers. So this has been in progress for a long time. They wrote a lot of copy. It's very clever. It's very funny, but it's timely. And I thought that was really fascinating that they thought of a clever way to put something literally on the shopping day before the event and tie it in and have it make sense. So July 3rd, the what if we won day, which is, I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool. That was a neat advertising campaign. I hope it works out for them, but I think it will if they did what I said and tied the radio campaign to some kind of prominent display in the stores where you will actually be doing the shopping. Without that combination, like if you just go to the store and it's like cases of Newcastle in the slot where they normally are, I don't think it's going to work that well. Speaking of beers, this is a local brewery. No, never mind. This is Grand Rapids, Michigan. Anyway, the rep showed up at the bar that I hang out at a lot, and I got a free one, and I went out and bought some in case you guys like beer. This is Founders Brewing Company from Michigan. It's their all-day IPA, which is nice because I like IPAs, but they're pretty heavy and they get you wasted because they have a lot of alcohol, so you usually can't drink that many, but this one's nice and light, and you can drink them all day, as the advertising says. I quite like it, so if you're a beer fan and you go and you don't want to get the Newcastle, if you have these, check them out. I like them quite a bit. So that is our little what's happening in the real world segment of the show. This is the part of the show before we get into the real content. Usually I would have gone a bit longer before we got to this point, but this is where we would have an ad spot. So if you want to sponsor the show in any way, I have 2 spots available in every episode. I haven't officially started accepting sponsors yet, but this is where your ad spot would go. Basically, I will talk about whatever your product is in this spot on the show. So if you feel like the audience and the content are a close match with the kind of thing that you like to do, get in touch with me and we'll talk about a price in a future episode. I will kick off the official advertising, hopefully, as soon as the show becomes a podcast also, so I can make sure my advertisers are getting the benefit of all the media that I will be spamming this crap out to. But since we don't have an official advertiser, I will plug myself. I mentioned already earlier in the episode that the Cult of Copy group, which this show is an outgrowth of, has a paid newsletter. In that newsletter, you get an exclusive article from me, and also a selection of links of either like classic, very popular old Cult of Copy threads, or maybe threads that had a good start and didn't really kick off and are kind of hidden gems, or even hot new threads that just occurred this week. So if you're new to the group, or else you just don't squat on Facebook all day like I do, newsletter is a good way to make sure you don't miss the best stuff from the Cult of Copy group. Plus, like I said, you get a lengthy article from me. They started out being like 1,000 words, and they're frequently very, very much longer. I'm trying to keep them at around 3,000 words so I can get them out weekly-ish. I say weekly-ish. Don't think you get a newsletter and it's going to come out at the regular time every week, just because we keep things loose around here. You do get more than 1 issue every month, but it might be 3. Who knows? But I try to make it, it's a monthly subscription. I try to put out more than 1 issue a month. And because they are varying sizes, sometimes 30 pages, sometimes 10 pages, just depends on how long the article I was writing gets. It's $13 a month, which is discounted. It used to be $20 a month, and I've recently slashed the price. So if you're coming into the group and you like the group, you want to dig deeper into the group, you're obsessed with this kind of content, and you really want to get all the best stuff out of the community, and if you like my work, want to check it out and support it, it's $13 a month. You can get that. The shortcut URL is colinterrio.com, my name, colinterrio.com/cult newsletter. But if you join the Cult of Copy group, there's a little pinned post at the top with a $50 bill. where you can get 50 bucks off all the things that I've ever sold as training to the group. But there should be a link to the newsletter inside that post, which reminds me I should update it. I think maybe the pricing might be wrong in that post. But it's 13 bucks a month, which is a discount. It's like you save 100 bucks a year or something, 7 bucks per month, based off of the previous price of 20 bucks a month. So if you're interested, check that out. If not, you won't hurt my feelings, but do join the group and dig around because you might like it. End advertisement. Now we're going to get to the main content that we wanted to talk about as part of the show this week. So like I told you at the beginning, we're going to talk about the logical fallacy of false dichotomies and how you can use it for marketing. The biggest usage of the false dichotomy in sales that I can think of, the most common one that everyone, if you participate in marketing, knows, is reducing the sales proposition down to yes or no. Meaning, when you have the guy on your page and he's reading your sales copy, or he's in your office and you're doing your sales pitch to him, you don't want there to be a maybe, or I'm going to go shop around, or I'm going to come back later, because most of the time you lose control of the context and people get distracted. You know, they got other things to do. So you want to try and make it so it is a go or blow situation. You're ready to go, or else you're gone and we're not going to talk anymore. It's done. Like, you don't presume anyone's ever going to come back, at least in the traditional sense. When you're talking about online businesses, you can presume that they're going to come back. You can let them get away under certain contexts. But generally speaking, you want any specific sales message to be a yes or no proposition. You want them to decide right then. You want to put the pressure on them to decide right then, which in general is something that false dichotomies are very good at. They put the pressure on people to make a more immediate decision. And I think in a way the reason it is a logical fallacy that most people fall prey to is because they very, very much want someone to make their decision simple. So by taking a complex situation and boiling it down to only one of two choices, you're doing them a favor and they're willing to accept that. But most of the time they aren't really going to look too closely and realize that you're making one choice seem bad and one choice seem really, really good. To digress a little, one group that I think uses false dichotomies very effectively, even though they don't necessarily think of it as that, I mentioned this in the plug for the show, magicians frequently do tricks that involve a false choice. Now, hopefully any magician friends I have that may be watching the show don't get mad at me for revealing this. But one of the main tricks of magic is that the magician will give you, the mark, a choice. Either, you know, pick this pile of cards or pick that pile of cards, right? And the person, depending on the trick, picks the pile of cards. And the magician will stress, you had a choice. You picked it. I didn't pick this. You did it, right? And that makes it seem magical when later, oh, surprise, you picked the pile that had your card in it. Well, what the magician is doing is a false choice, because it doesn't matter which pile you pick, because if you pick the one that has your card in it, I can say, okay, well, you chose that pile. Let's keep that one and throw away the other one. If you pick the other pile, I'll say, okay, well, you picked that one. Let's throw away the pile you picked and keep this other one. It's misdirection. You feel like you had a choice, but there was no choice. I was always going to throw away the pile of cards that did not have your card in it. I just didn't specify what your choice indicated. And that's one use of a false dichotomy to show. It's not really a false dichotomy when a magician does it that way, but you can see how this binary choice gives people a very strong feeling that they are making a choice. They're making a real valid choice that has some significant impact on the outcome of whatever it is that you're talking about. But if you, as the persuader, have boiled this choice down to only two options, and one of them is good, one of them is bad, it's not really a choice. Like, you're pushing them into the one that you want, and you're eliminating, hopefully, effectively, their ability to be skeptical about what you're saying because you make the negative choice seem so bad. So again, to go back to sales situations, yes or no, you give them everything that you can that is a positive indicator that they should pick yes. So is it a good price for your product? Is it a better choice for what's on the market? Is it more likely to work specifically for their situation? Does it have some sweet ass bonuses that come with it if they act now? All of these things are positive reinforcers. Then what you do is you stack it and you make there be consequences for saying no. Like, the price is going to go up. We only have a limited supply. I can't give you the bonuses if you go away and think about this and try to come back later. That is the origin of what marketers know as the OTO, or the one-time offer, where you give them a strict offer. While you are right here on this page, or while you are physically standing in front of me, I can do X, Y, and Z for you. But if you leave, this will not be good. If you leave this page, or if you walk away at this moment, I can't give it to you again. I can give it to you right now, and only right now, yes or no. By combining those two, giving them every positive reason you can think of to say yes, and giving them every negative consequence you can think of if they say no, it makes the yes seem like a much better idea. Like, there's a much bigger pile of stuff in their mind on the yes side, whereas the no side, even though really all it is a no, like you keep your money in your pocket and I keep my thing and you walk away, now you've made it feel like they're losing something, even though all they're losing is something they never actually had in the first place, right? Like, what is that? Like, you're going to lose this bonus if you walk away? Well, like 5 minutes ago, you didn't even know that bonus existed. Like, how much is that going to harm you to walk away from this deal? But it feels like it has teeth, because you're putting something on the table and then you're taking it away, even though, like, they never had it in the first place. You're taking away something that still belongs to you. Psychology is weird that way. So that's the yes or no. And I'm trying to stress this better during the live recordings of the show, because we usually don't end up having any questions at the end. If you have any questions on an ongoing basis about what we're talking about in the show, if you leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook post about this show, Zane, our director, is monitoring things. I forgot to let Zane introduce himself at the beginning of the show. We'll give him a chance to do that at the end, but Zane's in the control booth. You want to wave to people, Zane, on the camera so they can see you? Nice. Zane's in the control booth, making sure that I don't miss any questions that come through. So if you have any questions or comments about things as we go, don't wait till the end. I might not answer them until the end, but put them in as the show goes on, at the appropriate point where we are in the show, and I will try to answer them on the show. And if you're still here, maybe we can even interact and go back and forth. So that would be cool. That's the whole point of having a live show. Trying to mention that more frequently during the actual content. Let me pull up my notes here. All right, so another false dichotomy that I like to use in marketing when I can, and this is, I don't see it being used too much in like mass marketing or, you know, your typical product type scenarios, but it is used a lot in the subcategory of the style of marketing I do, which I guess you would call like guru style marketing, where you position yourself as an expert on a particular topic. You build an audience around that topic, and then you sell them things pertaining to your expertise, whether it's service or training or education or whatever. So I mentioned I used to be a copywriter. I built this group around sales and marketing copywriting, and then by extension persuasion. And now we have like 9,000 members built around that, and I do make my living creating content for this audience, like this show. This particular false dichotomy works really well in those situations where there's like a community component to what you're talking about, where people are inducted into some sort of group. Now, it doesn't have to be a specific cohesive group. It could be something very sort of broad and vague, like a political party that you maybe agree with more, even just a political philosophy like conservatism or liberalism or whatever. Narrowed more down specifically, maybe you're a Republican or a Tea Party or a Democrat or Libertarian or whatever within that broader spectrum. But what we're talking about is an us versus them kind of scenario where you set it up. I picked American political split on purpose because that is sort of a false choice of two. Even though we should have many, many more options, we really only have two. In fact, how many times have you heard, well, don't vote for the guy you actually want if he's not in one of the main two parties, because then you're quote unquote throwing your vote away. that's a false dichotomy. Like technically, you're not giving one of the main two guys your vote, and your guy may not have a chance of winning, but I wouldn't say you're throwing that vote away to vote who you want to vote for, because that's what you're supposed to do. But that false dichotomy idea of us versus them, where you narrow it down to either you're in the group or you're not in the group, and somehow the people who are not in the group are in an adversarial or competition or just an inferiority sort of position relative to the people inside the group. So for this own group that I run, the Cult of Copy, the premise of the Cult of Copy is that, as you can tell from the content of the show, I don't shy away from the more taboo or darker side of persuasion, i.e. tricking people, conning people, manipulating them, because I feel like even if you're a 100% ethical business and you have amazing products, there's a lot you can learn by looking at the shortcuts that crooks take to trick people into trusting them, especially if you are a good person and you're not going to fleece them. You're actually going to give them benefit. Why would you allow only crooks and people with bad intentions to use the shortcuts, right? There's nothing wrong in my mind with using a shortcut to authority if you actually have authority, right? Like if I can do a little trick to make you see me as being an expert in my field, perceiving me as an expert without me having to tell you I'm an expert, that's beneficial to me, not only if I'm a con artist trying to trick you, but also if I am a legitimate expert in that field, right? I digress. What I mean to be saying, that's the core premise of this Cult of Copy group. So I feel like that gives people, and this is deliberate on my part, I give people a way to feel like when they're a member of the group, they're getting an insider advantage. They're getting a special edge that people outside the group do not have. And I do that specifically to foster a sense of belonging, a sense of cohesion inside the community. Because in my particular field, if you are a marketer or copywriter, a business owner, there is competition. Everyone else besides you is a competitor in your particular market. By creating this group, I give you an us. So it's not you versus everyone. Now it's us versus them. So you're part of something that is going to help you in a collaborative way against all these other outside competitors. And it's subtle. I don't stress that very strongly, but it's something that I have seen done in many other guru-type communities. Other examples would be little fitness cliques, like CrossFit is one that very effectively uses the us versus them. They even use what I would refer to as like cult-like indoctrination tactics with the whole CrossFit training movement, where they encourage you to like be fanatical and rave at people about CrossFit the same way some religious cult would get you to rave about how happy you are and how enlightened and everything your new discovery is and how good it is for your fitness and soul or whatever. But the idea behind that it's an us versus them, not only is the them the unfit people when you're talking about CrossFit, it's all the people doing like the stupid, boring, jazzercise, wussy exercise, because CrossFit is like extreme and you push yourself to the point of hurting yourself and stuff, and you do all kind of like hardcore 120% exertion type exercises because you want to get ripped like Jesus, ripped like Jesus. I think that, what comedian is that? I think it's Greg Brent has that. He wants to be ripped like Jesus, which is funny because I remember being disappointed when I found out that CrossFit did not actually have any religious connotation, because when I heard the name, I thought that was like going to be like working out for Jesus. There's some t-shirt I saw ages ago, and I think it's even been like an image meme of like bodybuilder Jesus like flexing and snapping the arms off the cross. I always thought that was the most peculiar image, because like I'm not religious now, but I grew up Catholic, and that was definitely not the portrayal of Jesus that you get growing up Catholic, as like super muscular Arnold Schwarzenegger Jesus like snapping the arms off the cross. So I thought that was cool. But anyway, when I first heard of CrossFit, specifically because people were so fanatic about it, I presumed in my head that it had something to do with like some flavor of Christianity. But it doesn't, as far as I know. They just mean like cross-training CrossFit, not like cross. I digress again. That is a company that has nothing to do with my particular niche, that is very effectively using the false dichotomy of us versus them. I also mentioned politics, which is hilarious because the political discussion even extends now to a flavor of different news media. So like in America, MSNBC used to just be like a centrist kind of regular journalist type channel. And then Fox News came out, and even though they call themselves fair and balanced, I don't think anyone, even their fans, would deny that they're definitely a conservative, right-wing spin in all their opinion commentators. So when they say fair and balanced, they don't mean we are fair and balanced. They mean we are providing the other swing of the pendulum from what we see as, left-favoring media. Well, MSNBC started getting their asses kicked, so they're like, we'll just be the left-leaning network, right? So we'll move from the center to the left since it's working so well for those other guys. So now there's like different flavors of the news, whereas I remember distinctly, like growing up, the news was like giving it to you straight and didn't take any BS from either side. That was the point of the news. Now, if you like the BS from either side, you can pick a whole channel that's just going to confirm your biases all day long and tell you, here's what your interpretation of this particular news story should be, not just the facts. They'll give you what the opinion attached to those facts should be. It's very interesting to observe that happening, but they do very, very strongly create that us versus them mentality. And you'll even see it when they bring on guests, when they try to fairly discuss a topic. It'll be like people on the attack on their side of the argument, and the other people that they've brought on to sort of defend the other side. I don't know if they select meek, softer spoken people on purpose, but they'll pick people that the people arguing their side can trample in an unfair debate scenario. So again, it gets the audience to confirm their own pre-existing biases, and people mistakenly think that this us versus them choice is the clear scenario. It really is us versus them, when reality, even in America where we only have two political parties really vying for control, there's a very, very broad spectrum even within each of those two parties, and it does leave out people who straddle the middle of those two political spectrums. Because those two parties are split and they both take that us versus them stance, there's really not a whole lot of place for people who are like, I like some from column A and some from column B, because no one runs on that, because they run on 100% this side or 100% that side. There's no one that's like, well, these guys have good ideas and those guys have good ideas, and let's use all the good ideas no matter which side it comes from. There's no one on that side, because it's not a false dichotomy. It doesn't create a strong choice to say a little from column A, a little from column B. It's not, you can't force people in that. It doesn't sound aggressive enough. So that's us versus them. The next one, very, very similar, and I debated whether or not it was different enough to be a whole different category. So there's us versus them, and then there's with us and against us. It's very subtly different in that normally the us versus them, on the us, you're talking about that cohesive group inside the us. And then when you see the with us or against us, it's usually leveraged against people already in the us group to get compliance or consistency in their behavior, to get them to behave in line with what the group is about, right? So you use this false dichotomy of with us or against us, where if you disagree in any way with what's being dictated as the norm, the status quo of the group, then you can leverage the false dichotomy of with us or against us and say, well, look, if you're not 100% with us, you're 100% against us, which, like, maybe I only disagree on one minor point, and we agree 90%, but just on that one thing, and we could maybe come to an arrangement. No, if you're not 100% with us, go over there, you commie. Like, maybe we should have a social safety net. What are you doing? socialist, may as well be Nazi Germany over here, which is hilarious because, like, even though it's National Socialism, that's what Nazis stood for. They were fascists. Like, didn't really have to do with socialism in the way that people mean. Anyways, I digress. Um, Surprise, the people ranting about things don't actually know history. Uh, the trick with the with us or against us, I'm not saying I do this in a way that I'm trying to be sneaky or trick people, but the with us or against us thing comes out a lot in my marketing when I do concentric circles, right? So I have this show, which is open to the public, but even within that free show that's open to the public, you can subscribe. So that's like one step closer in if you are a regular watcher of the show. Then within that, you can join the actual discussion group that the show is an outgrowth of. That's yet another concentric circle, still closer in. I mentioned the newsletter where subscribers get exclusive content that no one else in the group gets. That is yet again another circle, but this time you have to pay to be in that inner circle. And even then, if you want to go deeper, if you're like a fan of my work and you like what I do and you want to learn how you do it, in not too long I'll be reopening it. But I did a training that's like how to start your own internet cult, quote unquote, so you can get a bunch of fans and do what I do, where it's different than marketing one product to the whole world. I create a little subgroup around a topic, and I market my products to the people who are in that group because it's a natural fit. I did it on purpose, but it is a topic I'm actually interested in. So it's sort of like I created my own niche interest group that I'm super interested in having discussions about and sharing things with and obviously talking about. Since I do this show every week, like I just love the topic. But also because I love the topic, like I'm an expert in it and I sell my expertise, why would I treat that business as like a whole different thing than just, you know, I'm going to build my audience around the thing I'm interested in and then sell my expertise inside that audience. That's how, like, that's really what a TV network is conceptually. You're like creating a bucket for people to get into, and by putting material that they like, content, shows, and then you do that to say, hey, look, we have this kind of people in this kind of bucket that like this kind of show. Hey, advertisers of things these kind of people buy, would you like to buy advertising time on our network? It's sort of like that, except currently I only advertise my own products. I digress. The point of that is, in each of those concentric circles I mentioned, there's a bit of with us or against us, and that every layer you go deeper and deeper. My name's under my head, man. It's right there. For the people listening to the audio only version, Omar Martin, who is a friend of mine, he does actually know me, says, "Who's the dude with the beard?" I guess I should mention for the people listening to the audio only version, I have a beard. Where was I? Oh yes, to be a truer and more loyal and more dedicated member of the quote-unquote cult of copy, to be a better and better cultist, things are lined up naturally. I mean, I didn't even really have to try that hard, but they're lined up more and more so that to get more and more exclusive content, to go deeper and deeper, to feel like you're interacting more and more with me. See, like if you're a watcher of the show, we interact on this show when it's recorded live once a week. But if you're a member of the cult, we chat frequently every week. If you're a member of like my private mastermind group I mentioned, we like might even get on the phone and talk. So it keeps getting closer and closer, so that it's not necessarily with us or against us, but to be more and more with us is a choice to come closer and closer in. There's only one direction you can go if you want to be more and more immersed in what it is that I do. Lots of businesses that set that up will, depending on the way that they do it, a lot of times they will use the with us or against us scenario if they keep making the more and more expensive, more closer in varieties what you should be doing. In other words, if they make it like a ladder, like you should advance more and more, like for example, say like a martial arts school. Like if you become like, I don't know the levels of belts, but what's the one before black? Let's say for the sake of argument, it's like brown. Like if you are a badass brown belt and you can kick every other brown belt's ass, it's kind of a dick move for you to not step up and become a black belt. So you could, you know what I mean? Like you can't just squat on the ladder and be like, I'm the best brown belt that is because I can kick all your ass. Well, then you should like step up and become a black belt and see if they can kick your ass because they are better than you. Well, a lot of businesses can set things up that way, especially like in self-help or like in elite fitness or even in like sneaky like asshole cults, like real religious cults, can set it up to where, well, if you're dedicated, you can't just come to services, you have to start giving us money. And if you're giving us money and you're serious about being part of the community, you should just sell all your shit and give us all the money and move into the compound. You know, it's successive levels, but they do put the pressure on you to where you're either with us in the tighter knit group or you're against us. Even though like what they're saying now is against us is really just like still the same group, just a little farther out. So that one can be pretty insidious. But you can use it in a more gentle way by, like you'll see it a lot in fandom, where, you know, like, I'm always amused when there'll be like fandoms that have multiple communities and then they have rivalries with each other over the thing that they are all fans of. So like I don't know if this exists, but I'm using it as an example. Like if there were like two communities of My Little Pony fans and they're like, those guys don't even like the show for the right reasons. They're stupid, they like the wrong characters. This is the cool community of people who really appreciate this for the artistic monumental achievement that it is. That kind of thing exists, and that happens in like naturally occurring non-commercialized communities. That's just how people are. People want to develop that us versus them, with us or against us scenario. But anytime, if you can do it in your business where you can create that kind of clique, where it's like, we're the cool kids and those guys suck, and you want to make sure that people are complying and behaving, like if you're not a democratic group, it's very important that that clique behave in a certain way, then you set very strong standards and you make a very strong with us or against us sort of setup and set that expectation for the behavior. Because then everyone within that group that wants to be in the us instead of in the them is going to do all the stuff they need to do to be with us instead of against us.
Yeah, I think it may not be like a perfect example, but just the game World of Warcraft, Horde versus Alliance, right? The two opposing factions.
Right, that's one of the more brilliant things that that game did. It's like it's a multiplayer online game where you can do whatever you want. But step one, pick a team. There are two teams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it gives you something to do. It gives like there's nothing to be there's nothing to be a game about if there's no opponent. So even though they're selling a game that by design should be wide open and you should be able to do whatever you want, you still have to pick a team so you can have an opponent, someone to oppose you.
Yeah. I thought this was a pretty clever comment from Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Says my next CTA is going to be sell your shit and give me money now.
I actually own the domain shutupandpay.me. I've never done anything with it. I can't remember what it is that I thought I was going to do with it. I just thought a .me domain was cool to have. I also have sohelpmegs.us. That's so help me Jesus, but it's a .us at the end.
Right. Yeah.
Again, I shouldn't buy domains when I'm drunk late at night, I guess.
No. Good for stories.
Nice. But yeah, that ad scenario would work if you put it in front of the right audience. A more famous person in my particular genre, or I say person, it was more of a character that was created to sell information on how to make money online on the side, like extra cash as an affiliate marketer or whatever. He took the same training that everyone else was doing, but instead of trying to position an actual real person as an authority figure. He made up a fake character called the Rich Jerk, and the whole pitch was like, I'm rich, you're not, you suck, buy this, and maybe not suck as much. And it worked. Like, it was a multi-million-dollar business. He sold, the guy who founded it sold it for at least $1 million. I can't remember the exact deal, but they made a ton of money, and then he sold it for a bunch of money. I don't know if it's still around. It was one of those things where probably didn't have a lot of longevity, but it was very, very powerful and very, very lucrative at the time that he did it. And that character was very much a galvanizing figure. It was very much an us versus them, with us or against us type of character, because he was like, either you're cool and you're going to buy this, or you're an idiot and you're going to be poor, and I hate you. It's very, very aggressive. But it worked. Went in front of the right audience. Like, I wouldn't say you could pull off a character like that in the home sewing niche, because they seem a little more aggressive. But it worked in a scenario like making money online, especially because it was advertised at young males who that aggressive, competitive type language appealed to. Sean Mitchell says, "Love it, man. Great presentation." Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Glad you could make it. We will keep going since you are enjoying it so much. We got 15 minutes, and I think we have a few more points. It's funny because we had that problem with how, like, I kept making really long episodes because I would prepare too much material. And I was so worried I'd prepared too little this time. And, like, we still have 2 points to go with 15 minutes left. So, nice. I'm glad I didn't rethink it and try to add more. Another false dichotomy that people use in marketing very effectively is you draw the line between success and failure, and buying your product will lead to success, and not buying it will lead to failure. Obviously, again, that if you stop and think about it, that's a false choice, especially if there are competing products that allegedly help people do the same thing. But if you want to learn how to do something, or you need to accomplish a particular task, setting it up so that all other options equal failure is very, very powerful. You even see it in infomercials, and like it's a joke internet meme where people will take this clip out of infomercials, but it's the "I'm fucking up so bad" clip, where like if they're selling a TV tray, the picture of the guy failing in black and white and slow motion is like just spilling food all over himself while sitting in his recliner. Just like the exaggerated "I'm screwing this up super bad," or like the guy choking himself to death with his garden hose because he doesn't have the kind that shrinks up when you turn the water off. Those kind of things. But that's what they're showing you. They're splitting, they're making a visual version of a false dichotomy that's either failure or success, and our product is success.
Yeah,
even
you
though
don't even
like,
get the joy of color. It has to be
right,
black and white.
right, or like it zooms in and gets all grainy, and they use film tricks, like to use the language of film with like stirring music, and they zoom in and they slow down. These are all visual tricks. In fact, if you ever notice that in a movie and there's a really tense moment and they switch to slow motion, I don't know if you knew this, but that's meant to simulate, like when you're in a car accident or something, or like you're just witnessing something terrible happen and it seems like time slows down because your adrenaline kicks in and your perceptions actually start paying attention to every detail instead of ignoring everything. You'll notice people say that, like if they were in an accident, they'll say, "It was weird, like I saw it happening, I couldn't stop, but I saw it happening almost like in slow motion." Well, in movies, they use that slow motion trick to simulate that in your brain. So if there's something that's meant to be like if they want to make you have a sensation of spidey sense or whatever, like if it's a hero who's noticing, oh, there's bad guys over there, they'll slow the camera down and like point it at things and linger on it, longer than you would normally, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the camera simulate your point of view in a stressful situation, which runs slower. Sometimes they'll even use like a red filter and make everything turn red, because people talk about that, how like, I was angry and, I was seeing red. Like the reason you quote unquote see red is because when you have a rush of blood to your head, your eyeballs are clear. You actually are looking through your own blood when you see red.
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, but that's why they use those red filters. Anyway, I digress. Um, let's see. We're talking about success or failure as being an option. So one way I've
Yeah.
done this in sales copy is um, when you get to the end of the letter and you're reminding them of all the logical benefits and you're reminding them of all like the emotional, awesome feelings that they're going to get. One of the last things I like to do is to do what I call a fear close, which is where you're tapping into their fear of not actually solving this problem that you're telling them that your product is going to solve. And the way I set that up, the softball way to do it is to say, well, we talked at the beginning of the letter about what your situation is like now, suffering from this problem. If you do nothing, the best case scenario is it's going to stay exactly the same, which we've already established sucks. If you want to do the harsh version of the fear close, you use another logical fallacy called the slippery slope argument, where you tell them how their inaction today is going to set up a domino effect of negative consequences that are going to stack up. So, like, if you don't buy this product to help you get more leads in your business, the economy is going to smash you. You're going to go out of business. Your wife is going to leave you. She's going to take the kids, and you're going to end up homeless on the street. That's an extreme example. You can be a lot more subtle with it, but I do that to illustrate what you can do, where you can set up these dominoes in a slippery slope argument to show how, like, saying no to this is not only going to be failure, it's going to be catastrophic failure. Whereas if you
Yeah.
say yes, you're going to solve your problem automatically.
Yeah, Comcast. Comcast did that exact commercial of that same thing
Yeah,
of
they did a
right.
joke
It's the
scenario,
joke.
same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Uh,
Like if you get satellite, then this happens, and then you get
mhm.
angry, and then this happens, and it's like this perpetually more and more ridiculous scenario
Yeah, the
that
one
plays
I
out.
remember is like the guy's roommate drinks some rotten milk in the fridge and it turns him into a zombie, and then it leads to the zombie apocalypse and the entire world
Yeah.
ends because he didn't upgrade his cable service. And
Yeah,
that's
no,
that's
that's really funny too.
yeah, it's a clever ad writer. What's funny though is companies like Comcast, at least where I live, even though we have like Comcast and Charter and AT&T, they usually have like specific zones where they own the equipment. So like in my neighborhood, even though we have multiple quote unquote competing companies depending on where in the area I live, in this neighborhood I can only get Charter because they own the wires. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
same at my place.
it's funny that they advertise in the way that they do, considering most of the time if you live in a certain place you have to get that certain service. At least that's been my experience. I don't typically live in big cities or anything. So that is the success or failure. You reduce things down to joining us or buying this or adding this add-on to your order is going to increase or bolster or guarantee your success, and then you can provide reasons why saying no and passing on that particular option that you're trying to get them to get may lead to failure. And that's the trick. That's the way you can be subtle about it and not like be a jerk or exaggerate or joke about it the way that we just talked about. If you're going to be subtle, you talk about all the ways that getting it guarantees, reinforces, increases the chance for success. And then you just talk about ways that maybe not getting it will lead to failure, possibilities, right? But in the person's mind, they have guarantees and possibilities, but they can't necessarily weigh those against each other. Like they feel equal somehow, even though you're talking about possibilities of success possibilities of success versus possibilities of failure. They're really just all possibilities, but when you present them in that particular way, success versus failure in a false dichotomy, you really, really, really are going to drive people towards choosing the option that's going to succeed. Next, we have the last one I have on the list, which is good because we have about 10 minutes left, is thrive or die. And I sort of jumped the gun when I talked about that slippery slope where you tell people like, they're going to experience a catastrophic failure. But really, any scenario where you're selling a one-off solution to a problem, like I'm just selling this one thing that solves this one problem. Let's say, for the sake of argument, maybe it's like an SEO tool that checks the number of backlinks to any number of your web pages, right? Something really innocuous like that. If you want to widen the argument and really push the case for buying that particular software, a thrive or die false dichotomy would talk about how companies that care about their SEO in general and constantly check these things are the ones that are going to thrive because they have the information they need to make smart decisions about the tools that they buy and the way they promote their business. Whereas companies that don't care about that thing are basically at the mercy of whatever the search engine wants to give them, and they don't care about optimization. You take what you get. One day you wake up, some new Google animal has ran its way through. Google did their platypus update or whatever, and now all of a sudden you've lost all your rankings, and you don't know what to do because you don't even know what SEO is. That's a thrive or die argument, especially when I'm applying it to, are you going to buy this one little piece of software that doesn't do anything, it just gives you some information. That thrive or die argument is, I totally make sense why it would be, but you see it used a lot in doomsday scenario type advertising. Like, you need to get this investment newsletter so you can learn how to invest in gold because the dollar is going to be destroyed, and packs of wild dogs will be wandering the streets among burning buildings any day now. Or in the prepper market, obviously a thrive or die scenario is plausible because that's what they're telling you is going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically your choice in any alleged doomsday scenario, is that either you're going to thrive or you're going to perish. But outside of those life or death contexts where those things are being sold, you can really effectively use a thrive or die argument in all kinds of seemingly more innocuous places. Food, like supplements, again, fitness, anything informational where that information gives you some kind of edge. You'll even see it like in advertisements for subscribing to your local newspaper, or like these Wall Street Journal commercials for subscribing to that. Talk about how, in fact, they have a famous sales letter for the Wall Street Journal about the two guys who went to school together and had all the same advantages, and then decades later, one of them's like the manager of his company, and the other one's just a lowly employee. And the difference is one guy subscribed to the Wall Street Journal and the other guy didn't. That's the basic setup, and it's a really, really good sales letter. I suggest you look it up. You can find it easily online. But it's basically creating the false dichotomy. It's using a lot of these. It's using success and failure, with us or not with us or against us versus them. But really, it comes down to this thrive or perish argument, because he talks about how all of the information in that newspaper is what gave him the information he needed to make, again, smart decisions about his business. When really the decision we're talking about is, are you going to give us a few bucks a month to get this printed thing mailed to your house, and we're going to put ads in it because if you like the content. Like, that's really the proposition when they're asking for a yes or no. But they make it seem like the advantage of that information is the difference between thriving and profiting, or barely getting by, or in fact failing completely. It's one of those things where maybe the way I'm explaining it makes it seem kind of hyperbolic, and you're like, oh, no one really does that. Pay attention to mass market advertising and see how many times a thrive or perish argument is being used to sell you something seemingly like ridiculous when you stop to actually think about it. Like the whole organic versus non-organic food movement, talking about like, oh, all the pesticides and the genetic modification that happens to regular food that you buy from the grocery store, that everyone has been eating for decades, and we live longer now than we ever have. But never you mind, like, you need to buy the organic stuff for like 30% more markup, because all that other stuff is killing you. You're gonna die. You want to be healthy, you need to eat the organic stuff. Which, I'm not saying it's not more healthy for you. I'm not saying it's not pesticide free. I'm saying that other stuff that's allegedly poison is doing a really bad job of killing everyone. Because every time I go to the grocery store, it's wall-to-wall assholes. So it's not working. They won't die no matter how much hamburger helper they're eating, man. Um, that seems to be all that I have note-wise for the show, which is good. We have 5 minutes left. I don't know if we have any questions or comments further. I'll let Zane get a hold of those. But I'm
Yeah.
going to go through the ending spiel, and then we'll relax and answer those last few questions before I let you go to your 4th of July holiday. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. You got some insights that you can use in your marketing. This is the Cult of Copy show. We record new episodes live Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can attend live if you want, interact with us like some wonderful people have so far in this episode, Laura and Sean. If you happen to not be able to make it, these are all archived to our YouTube channel. This is the 12th episode, including an episode 0, so there are actually 13 episodes in our channel right now at youtube.com/cultofcopy. If you'd like to dig even deeper and join our community discussion group for these type of topics, you can go to cultofcopy.com and join our Facebook group. We have approaching 9,000 members, lots of conversations of this level going on all day, every day, if you want to geek out even further. If you want to super geek out, we have a paid newsletter for members of the Cult of Copy who cannot dig into the discussion as deeply as maybe they like, or they would just like to look at old threads that they may have missed if they are a new member. You can get that at colinterio.com/cult newsletter. Just join the cult, look at the post pinned at the top of the group, and you'll find it there. It's only $13 a month. You get multiple issues per month, weekly-ish, as I call it, exclusive content from me, plus links to classic or overlooked or hot threads from the Cult of Copy from now and yesteryear. I say that we've only been around a year and a half now, but I digress. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio, Pontifex Maximus of the Cult of Copy, and I told Zane I would let him do his little spiel since I forgot to at the beginning of the show. So our show's director, Zane, if you're interested in this type of show where I'm talking to you live and we record it to YouTube, Zane is the expert that makes all that happen, and he has his own little community I would love for him to tell you about.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna keep this nice and short because we actually do have quite a few questions and comments. So I'll keep this as short as I can. I'm on Google Plus. You can find me on Google Plus. You can search for me on there and find me there. My community is called G-Tron Marketing because I'm a big nerd and like Voltron, Google. I don't have time to get into the explanation, but go and check it out. We're talking about AdWords, YouTube, Hangouts, and Google Plus. So love to have you there. We are on Google Plus because it's kind of the Google thing. So that's why I'm not on Facebook, right? So come and join us over on Google Plus. But let's get to these questions. Thank you again, Colin. But there's
Yeah,
some
man, let's
really
do it.
cool
I will mention Zane just spoke at a live event this weekend, and a lot of people enjoyed what he had to say. So if you have a live marketing event, you should invite Zane to come and talk about this stuff. If you think your audience is interested in this kind of media interaction. I mean, it's crazy to me that like I have a show on the internet that people can show up to live and interact, and like I'm just using a regular old laptop. I wouldn't even have known that was possible if not for technology Zane knows about. So talk to the dude. He knows what he's talking about.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it. So this first point, I just want to encourage those of you who are watching live or watching the replay, go back to the Cult of Copy where this is posted,
Okay.
and check out Sean's basically analysis of why CrossFit is so addictive.
Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, really, really cool. I mean, I was reading this and I was just like, wow. Like, I mean, he actually did an analysis of this and really got into it. So I strongly encourage you guys to check that out. So that was the first thing. The next thing we have here was again from Laura, and she says, speaking of this new emerging TLDs, stuff like IHatePayPal.com, it does this us versus them. She's asking what suggestions you might have on taking on the popular big dogs to monetize that us versus them.
You always got to be careful with that because company names are trademarked, and technically in a trademark, especially in U.S. law, a lot of people don't realize this. Like fans will get upset when like Nintendo will sue your Nintendo fan site out of existence and things like that. You're like, oh, I'm such a big fan. Why are you being jerks? Well, like U.S. trademark law says that if you don't vigorously defend your trademarks, it can be used as grounds for saying that you voided your desire to retain that trademark. So anytime a company is like going to viciously defend their name, their trade dress, the way their logo looks, they have to. Because if they don't, then a competitor can steal some of their look or nomenclature and say, well, you didn't stop us, so that's grounds that you abandoned your trademark. I had a friend of mine who sold real estate in Atlanta that had a website, and he used a font that he found for free online that made the logo look like Coca-Cola's logo, like the curly script. And Coca-Cola called him like within a week to tell him he needed to take it down. Like they served him a cease and desist. For the font, he wasn't even selling soda. It just had like the font that was recognizable as a Coca-Cola based font. And again, it seems like they're being jerks. Like, why would they care? But it's because of U.S. law. The way U.S. law is, you have to care, or else it passes for abandoning it.
Yeah, I guess
Not see, I'm not a
yeah.
legal expert, so
Right.
Laura's specifying, yeah, they can't monetize the site with the TM in the domain. Not having it in the domain is fair game, though. No, I have no idea. It's going to depend on what country you're in, what that country's international agreements are with the United States as far as how they handle trademarks and things. I don't know. It's hard to tell, and I'm not a legal expert. I'm not authorized to give any kind of legal advice. One thing that you can do if you want to try and monetize yourself against bigger brands is if you do it from a scenario where you are reviewing them or commentating on them and you have more than one of them and you're doing a comparison or contrast, and what you can do is become an affiliate of the ones that you can.
Mm, yeah. Uh-oh. Come back, Colin. You still there?
Where you segment
Oh, there
first
you go.
particularly, but then you put an affiliate link for all five. So no matter which one people choose, whether they like your review on one particular one and agree with you on what the best one is or not, you can still monetize that. That should theoretically be okay because you are both an affiliate and you are doing it fairly in a review scenario. But
Hmm.
the affiliate agreement that you get with those particular companies may specifically exclude that kind of marketing. But that's just one idea off the top of my head. You would have to dig deeper into it. And once again, though I'm a reverend doctor and a knight, I am not a lawyer. So I cannot give legal advice. Check with anyone before you are trying to either directly or indirectly profit off of recognition of someone else's trademark. I can't actually tell you whether that's okay or not.
Tim's
What else we
loving it.
got?
Tim's loving it.
Nice. Thank you, Tim. Happy to
Uh,
have you. Glad you came.
Laura also says, I'm mostly stoked to use dichotomy. Yeah. I is so smart now. So, yeah, a lot of comments, man. A lot of comments.
Sweet, sweet. I'm glad. Man, if I would have known all I had to do was tell people to do it earlier in the show, I would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. We've also, a question from Carl Pico.
hmm
Um, he's asking, do you have an example of actual words you used in a sales page? Also, does this go above slash below the buy button?
I'm
Hmm.
presuming you're talking about the bit that I talked about with the fear close. Personally, I like to use the fear close where you tell people if you buy this, everything is going to go great, but if you don't, everything terrible in the world is going to happen. I
Right.
use that fear close very, very last, and it's the third of three closes that I do. I do an emotional close to get the happy people out of the way. I do a logical close to convince the people that are kind of interested but not sure. And then I do the fear close for the people who are like not making a decision but haven't left yet. So that's when I start getting mean and aggressive and pushy, is when you're like, well, you didn't fuck off yet, but you haven't bought yet. So now I'm going to start getting harsh with you. Not necessarily harsh, I just start messing with negative emotions at the very, very end. Um, That's where I put it. So it's at the very, very end of the letter, and it's the third close. So it would come after the first buy button. But anytime I do a close, you put a buy button right after it. Anytime I'm ending the sentence with, so click buy now, there should be a big buy now button right next to that. For anyone interested in a full sales letter formula, I sell one inside the Cult of Copy. I did like an hour plus long training. Plus, you get the template of how to put together a sales letter, which that bit that I talked about is in there all the way at the very end. But it's a very, very large mind map. You can read more about it in the Cult of Copy in that pinned post at the very top of the page if you're interested and want the full template that that little bit comes from.
Right. So the final question. Mostly we have just a bunch of people who are like, "Yeah, the show was awesome." So the final, more like question that's being posed here is asking, what are the essential steps in a cult slash fan base building? And you were actually mentioning a little bit earlier that weren't you going to be opening up this?
Yes, hopefully it'll be next week. I'm going to be reopening, I guess you would call it like the cult leader training thing. I did it at the beginning of the year, and I offered it as a charter program to basically just coax the information out of me and give me a reason to lay it all out. And what I found were sort of more advanced marketing people that had a lot of resources ready to deploy, like they had products already to sell, they had a list to promote the group to. They did very well with the higher level training. So what I'm going to do this time is take that same high level explanation of how to do what I do and break it down into more step-by-step processes. And hopefully we'll be launching that next week. But in general, to create the cult-like following, I think the main thing is to, no one's going to follow a leader who's not passionate about that particular topic that they're gathering around. So it has to be a topic that you can't help but not shut up about, right? So it's the kind of thing where people will ask me, well, how much time does it take you to run the Cult of Copy? And I'm like, I don't know. It's all I do all day, but it's fun. I like it. Like there's like the thing that Zane showed that Sean posted. I'm going to go read that today. And I'll probably read 50 other posts inside the group that showed up today because I love the topic. So it has to be something that you're deeply passionate in, because your passion in the topic is what is going to infect the audience to be as passionately interested in the topic. So that's key. The next key is, don't, like, if you want to make it a commercialized cult following that you want to make money off of, if you intend to sell things to them directly, that needs to be part of the understanding from the very beginning. So it needs to be clear that you are a paid expert and that they can buy things from you. Because if you introduce that later on, your earliest fans are going to feel like it was a bait and switch. But if the moment they join your group, there are things for sale and it's clear through the way that you talk that you are a person who does this for a living and that people can give you money for expertise in this field, then it's not even an issue. Alternately, if you don't intend to commercialize the audience in that way, you'll notice I've always had the advertising spots in this show, even though I don't have ads there yet. That's so that later on no one can be like, oh, you sold out, you got ads in your show now. Like, no, there are always going to be ads. I'm just putting the spot there where they're going to be. So it's a similar thing. If it's something where you're going to monetize the audience as it grows by giving them advertising, there should be something there where the advertising is going to be, even if you don't have any advertisers yet. Again, so that there's no confusion about what the purpose or format of the group is going to be. If I'm going to give a third tip, I would say don't make the mistake of founding like a democratic group or one where like the group owns the group. Like if you're going to start a quote-unquote cult, there needs to be a strong leader figure. There needs to be a sheriff in town who lays down the rules. There needs to be someone where the buck stops as far as administrating things and guiding the conversation. That's why it helps if you are super passionate about your topic and have a specific angle that you want to put out there, because that gives you the power to actually control the group, and then you can sort of dictate behavior and do that kind of thing where you can make a with us or against us argument that the audience is going to take seriously. And it's important to do that if you want the group to be cohesive and compliant and courteous. I do it not because I'm ruling my group with an iron fist like a religious cult leader, but because it makes it so that the group as a whole knows what's allowed. They know what's spam, what should be kicked out. They know how to self-police, and they put value in the community because it feels like something they belong to, because there's someone watching out for them, ensuring that the community is of a certain quality. And I think that matters a lot to people. So those are some key points, but again, keep an eye out for that ongoing training, which I'm going to launch next week, if you want to dig deeper into that, because I'll go a lot more detail and a lot more step-by-step. But those are some big, broad tips that I think should help.
Yeah. We've also got another comment in the group. And I zoomed in because I dug the picture. He says you should add magus?
Oh,
Know,
magus.
right? Magus to your title line, right? Since you brought up the magic stuff, and I was like, all right.
I saw I could get a wizard diploma off of Amazon. And yes. I thought that would be cool, except I will say, being in the Deep South, wizard has like a negative connotation as a title in certain circles.
Huh.
You know, because of the clan.
Oh.
So,
right.
So
yeah.
I'm not gonna really go with putting wizard directly in my title, but I have thought about that. But I figure Reverend Doctor Sir gives an aura of mystique that is adequate. By the way, like those titles, even though I just bought them online and didn't do anything to quote unquote earn them, they are all valid. So like if anyone needs a wedding ceremony performed, I can do that in all 50 states in the United States. I'm available. Call me. With that, man, nice. We hit an hour and then just a little bit more for the questions. Sweet. Score for setting goals. So that's all I got for this week. We will see you next week, same time, same channel. And have a great 4th of July weekend for my American compatriots.
Yeah,
Adios.
all right.